A critical step as part of a good and comprehensive special needs plan to protect your loved one is coordinating with family. You cannot think of special needs planning as being done in a silo. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if mom and dad want to create a special needs trust for their son on the autism spectrum, or their daughter with cerebral palsy, or whatever it is, you have to coordinate with other family members. Why? Well, if you leave money, the point of a special needs trust is that an unlimited amount of money can be in the special needs trust if it's done right, if it's done by experts, and you have the trustee overseeing it. It doesn't interfere with public benefits. But money that goes directly to your child, that can interfere with public benefits, and you have to kind of clean up that mess later. So what do we mean by coordinating with family? Well, what if grandma and grandpa want to support your child? What if an aunt or an uncle might want to support your child down the road? They need to make sure that their estate plan points to the special needs trust that you've created for your child. If they leave money directly to your child, that causes some problems. And they can create a separate special needs trust for that, but it's not ideal. It can cause disruptions. But Mike, do you want to talk about any examples of that, or just how we think about that?
It wasn't that long ago, I think about a year and a half ago, when a beloved aunt left $80,000 to an individual who was receiving government benefits, disabled, not able to work, and that created short-term chaos. The receipt of money like that has to be reported to the eligibility worker, and it disrupted eligibility for government benefits. We were able to solve it very quickly. We actually used a combination of something called the ABLE Act, created an ABLE account, and what's called a first party, one of the 2 or 3 varieties of a special needs trust. So had that beloved aunt simply talked with the family, understood that there was a special needs trust, she could have made the simplest change in the world in her trust and just said, hey, the $80,000 doesn't go to my nephew, it goes to the special needs trust that was created for the benefit of my nephew. That would have avoided a very costly and really upsetting series of events that really caused some real disruption for the family. So simple solution when you understand the options.
Yeah, it's not just your family's estate plans. It's life insurance policies. It's retirement accounts. So, and one big mistake we see is grandma and grandpa know they have a child with special needs, and they're leaving money to the parents, right? So that it's not really an issue. But what if in the unlikely event that mom and dad predecease the child? Most estate plans, unless they work with experts and coordinate it, will just say, oh, it goes to their kids. We have to make sure it doesn't say that. It says, look, if mom or dad is not around, it does not go directly to the child with special needs, the grandchild, that it goes to their special needs trust. So, and same with beneficiary designations for retirement accounts, life insurance policies, same issue. So it's always important to coordinate. A critical step for special needs planning, I think, is often overlooked, at least at first, is financial planning. And what do we mean by that? Well, just how can you be sure there's going to be enough to support your child after you're gone? And that's a really hard question. I mean, a lot of times people will ask us, well, how much do we need to have there? And the answer is always like, hey, more is better, of course. But if you had unlimited money, you wouldn't be stressed about these things too much. Let's talk about some real numbers. And I think this may actually undercount given inflation now, but there was a recent study that came out that said just the lifetime cost, and we're focusing on autism here, but this could be any mental disability, any disability that prevent someone from working. And if they have specific medical needs, it could be even higher than this. But there was a recent study that said $3.56 million minimum to support an adult on the autism spectrum. Depending on where you're living, it could be a lot more. We're going to talk about property tax issues if you're trying to leave a property for your child, but it could be a huge number, right? And again, more is always better. Why not have a bigger financial safety net? But you might be thinking like, well, that's great, but like I don't have $3.5 million to leave for my child. I wish I did. And what if you have multiple kids? You don't want to have to leave everything to just the child with special needs. You might want to help out your other kids as well. How can you be certain of having that safety net in place? There's a pretty cool tool for that I think some people overlook. So Mike, why don't you talk about what that special tool can be?
Play the lottery. Right? I mean, get some lottery tickets. That's a sure thing.
10 tickets a week. We promise you probably won't win ever. But that is right. That's strategy, right?
Yeah. I mean, the odds of winning are the same as whether you play or not. So okay, we'll set that aside. Okay, life insurance. It is not a typical thing for us to recommend life insurance, but this is a context where we think it makes a great deal of sense to make sure that there's some minimum number of dollars that's going to be there, no matter what happens in the future, in the event of your early demise in particular, or even upon your passing at sort of a natural ending of your lifetime. So let me give you a really simple example, just to make the point that life insurance is more accessible than you might think. So, there's term insurance, which is very cheap. It really doesn't cost that much. And the reason it doesn't cost that much is because it only lasts up to a certain age. They rarely pay off. That's why they're cheap. So you can put money into that, but better in most situations, you get a whole lot, you get a real life insurance policy that's going to be there. That's not going to end at some particular age. So let me give you a really simple example with a couple that we worked with quite a number of years ago. They had a severely disabled child, severely disabled child, and they needed to do a plan, and they came in because they heard us talk in a seminar and knew they had to act. So we put together the special needs trust, and they were so concerned about having enough money. They were in their 40s, they were in good health, so the idea of life insurance came up. Long story short, we brought in a life insurance specialist, a professional, and gave them a number of options. They looked at annual premiums that they could pay, and they looked at a lump sum, single premium payment. How much money would it cost, in their example, at that point in their lives, to buy a policy that would provide for a $1 million death benefit. And at that point in time, they got what is called the second to die, which means the policy wouldn't pay off until the second death. The cost, one time only, was $62,000. That's not a small amount of money. That's not. But you think about what you're getting for it, the peace of mind. In that case, by the way, the wife's parents helped. They paid about half of that premium for them. That is not always available. But really, the point is, you got to think about something that's going to provide that minimum level of support, minimum level of care. And by the way, it also strikes me the number that we had up, the 3.5 million, that number would not be as high if there is a house that you might be able to leave for your child. Mark will get into Prop 19 a little bit later and the threat that it poses to that plan. So again, this number assumes that everything is going to have to be paid for, including the cost of housing. So that number is so inaccessible for so many of us, it seems. So we just got to be practical in how we look at it. So life insurance is one of the options that we have to consider. Virtually every experienced special needs planner, whether you're a financial planner or an attorney, you think about this. You raise it at some point. So it's got to be part of the thinking going forward.
We have some experts we work with very closely. So if you have questions about this, let us know. We've helped many clients to find great policies. And if you have an old policy, by the way, you can trade in. This is kind of a side note. If you have an old life insurance policy and you haven't looked at it in 5 or 10 years, there may be options to sell it basically and exchange it for a much better one with minimal costs. It's pretty crazy. Just talk to us. If you have an old plan, feel free to reach out to us. We can have it examined by an expert. There's no charge for that. But life insurance is really powerful. Related to that, though, you might be thinking, okay, well, I saw the $3.5 million number. I see maybe life insurance is right, but my child is unique and specific, and they have specific needs. How can you think in an even more analytical way about this? Well, one framework that I like to use is kind of like retirement, right? So retirement, in theory, maybe you have a pension, maybe you get Social Security, but you're in theory not going to be earning any more money. And what are the general rules of thumb for how much you need for retirement? Well, you calculate how much you need every year, and you can generally assume that you can take 3 to 4% of principal every year, and that should be sustainable for the rest of your life. So let's say you need $40,000 a year to live on top of any other Social Security, whatever you have. Well, you need $1 million in the bank, invested reasonably well. It should be able to, this is a rule of thumb from many financial advisors, should be able to kick off about 4% in returns every year. And that $1 million it'll go up some years, down some years, but it should sustain indefinitely. Maybe that's a little higher right now because inflation is higher, and I know you can get risk-free returns of like 5% now. So maybe that number is a little bit higher. But let's think about this for your child. So the simple equation is, how much does my child need every month in support? How much do I think they're going to need? Let's keep inflation in mind, because inflation is very real. So the number now might be double in 20 years, who knows, or 10 years. How much do I need every month? Multiply that by 10. Okay, you have that number. How much needs to be in a trust? So 4% taken out every year meets that number. So again, let's say you determine your child needs about $3,600 a month, comes out to about $40,000 a year. You would need $1 million in a special needs trust to have a reliable stream of about $40,000 a year indefinitely, and you can multiply it from there. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. Every situation is different, but we do like to think about this. And again, if you don't have enough there, and you have your own needs, of course, that's where life insurance can be great. And that's where coordinating with other family members can be great. If other family members can chip in and leave small shares of their estate to help bridge that gap. But you have to have a good financial plan. And let's just talk about another part of financial planning. We are big believers that, especially when there's a child with special needs, your financial planning has to be integrated with your legal planning. We're developing some programs around that with a couple of financial advisors we work with closely, some cost-free programs for clients. But most importantly, you need to make sure everything is coordinated, that one hand is talking to the other. It's always important, but it's especially important in special needs planning. Does your financial plan account for your long-term care needs? 70% of us over the age of 65 are going to need some form of long-term care. That can be very expensive. Do you have insurance for that? Does your plan account for that? Does your plan account for the increased need for money to be left over for a special needs plan? Are accounts titled properly? Are your non-retirement accounts titled in your trust? Are your beneficiary designations up to date? Can't tell you how often there's little errors there, and they can be big problems down the road. So having financial planner and legal planners who work together closely, we can make sure everything is properly titled. We can do regular reviews as documents are updated. We can update beneficiary designations and title. Is your plan consistent with legal updates? There are sometimes developments in the law and new tools like the ABLE Act, which recently passed a few years ago. Are you taking advantage of that? Are you aware of tax issues when you think about your plan? Are you adjusting estate tax issues, property tax issues? Does your plan take that into account for you and for your child? So we are working on building some programs ourselves, the Gilfix Family Office program, I guess you could say. Whether you work with us or not, there should be integrated planning. And we work with whether a planner is part of our program or not, we will always coordinate with planners if clients want us to. But we are building a family office approach for some select clients. So contact us if you're interested in that, where there is an integrated approach to legal and financial planning. So talk to us if you're interested in learning more. But either way, we are happy to work with your planner. And if you're working, God forbid, with another attorney on special needs planning, they need to be coordinating with your financial planner once in a while, just to make sure this is all properly coordinated. Any other thoughts there, Mike, about the importance of integrated planning?
I think you made the point. It's one of these things that's incredibly obvious once you think of it. The right hand needs to know what the left hand is doing. And, most financial planners, like most attorneys, you don't have special expertise in understanding government benefits. How does it all fit together? So part of the work that we're doing with these financial planners is making sure that they have an understanding of what these issues are, and that they talk with us, and that everything is coordinated. You don't have to have $20 million to have kind of a family office service. So that's what we're trying to make approachable and accessible for people. And we keep saying it, especially for folks with special needs issues in the family.
Absolutely. Integrated legal and financial planning, and making sure you have enough. There are a lot of tools out there. We can always talk to you if you have questions about that. But it's stuff that keeps people up at night. I think anybody would be kept up at night. How can I make sure my loved one, my child, is taken care of after I'm gone? So let's stay in touch. You can join our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. You can also join our mailing list on our gilfix.com website. Easy to join our mailing list. We at the Gilfix and the Pole team love to have more people in our community. Very easy to find us, gilfix.com, or contact us at 650-493-8070. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Hope everybody's staying safe, sane, and healthy, and we'll see you next time.